Welcome to the Alliance Center, the hub of sustainability in Colorado. I'm Anna Zavisha. I'm the Executive Director at the Alliance for Sustainable Colorado. We own and operate the center. Tonight's event is actually part of the Sustainability Series, or what we like to call S². And this is a partnership between the Alliance, the Worth Chair, Net Impact, and the Posner Center. We're going to hear tonight from a great panel, Interfaith panel, and we're going to talk about what the Pope is asking us to do, which is really to have a dialogue. This wonderful panel is going to be moderated by Bill Ritter.
Thank you, Anna. I appreciate it, and it's really great to be here, and actually fantastic to see such a wonderful crowd. An encyclical is something that a Catholic Pope writes, and they are sparing. There aren't many that are done over the time or the tenure of the Pope. There are some that are very famous in the Catholic faith, and this is the second encyclical that Pope Francis has authored. It's the first encyclical ever to deal in any way with the environment. Out of all the encyclicals in the history of the Church, it's typically written to the bishops and the priests of the world so that they can use it as part of their own teaching of Catholics. This encyclical by the Pope was authored, and at the beginning it says, this is not for bishops and priests, this is to all humanity. It's a really important thing. It's a departure from historical tradition in the Catholic faith for a Pope to say, I'm not going to limit this. It's one of the few encyclicals that actually deals with a question of science. There will be a part of it we'll talk about where it's a mixture of science and faith that the Pope is inviting us to dialogue about. The Pope's view of this, and I think the Vatican's view of this, is really that this is more than a question of science, Mitch McConnell notwithstanding. It's more than a question of science, it's about something much deeper than that. So it is about climate change and global warming, but there's an important part to this. People think the encyclical is just about that. It's not about that at all. And if you haven't read it, I would invite you to read it because it's the worldview, I think, that the Pope and the people inside the Vatican who are part of his leadership really have about this issue, but also really about a variety of things that he would call integral ecology. He's talking about an integral ecology that is about, it is about natural systems, but it's about human beings as a part of those natural systems and not as dominant of those natural systems. This is about our being stewards. And he would say we're not very good stewards. The people that will get hit first and possibly get hit worst if there's nothing done to curb warming, to curb sort of the whole pattern we have of consuming and our lack of stewardship responsibility to the natural systems, people that are going to get hit first and worst are the poorest of the poor. It is more than just a letter to all people about climate change or about global warming. It's so much more expansive than that it represents, as I said before, a worldview. We're going to ask our panelists, and I said the first question is going to be pretty broad, pretty general, and I'll give them an opportunity to talk a little more fully, a few minutes. Then we're going to have some follow-up questions that are specific, but we're going to get to audience questions sometime in another half hour to 45 minutes. I'd like to ask you, both because of your work in the Vatican, your work in Zambia, a developing country that's very much at the heart of the concern the Pope expresses, sort of your own sense from the Catholic perspective, and then more specifically, what part of the Jesuit tradition informed the Pope in putting out together an encyclical that's written to all people?
The Jesuits have a vocation to be at the will of the needs of the Church. So the Jesuit formation of a young man is very much broader in attitude as well as in his perspective of how he's going to deal with people. He not only deals with young kids, he deals with older people. He gets to be a mature adult before he is ordained a priest. So his formation as a Jesuit influenced him totally. As an archbishop, he lived with the poor. As a cardinal, he did that. And strangely enough, because they thought he wasn't friendly with the other Jesuits or whatever, it seemed that way, they elected him Pope, hoping that he would put order among the Jesuits. His formation as a Jesuit influenced him totally. As an archbishop, he lived with the poor. As a cardinal, he did that. Wherever you are working, you need to get involved with the people who are poor. The option for the poor is one of the criterion of what it means to be a Jesuit. If you do not take the side of the poor, you just don't even belong.
Studying the traditions of the world, you can look at their beliefs, you can look at their rituals, but you can also examine the interior experience of the participants. This is for many modern seekers, and that means people of faith and people looking for answers outside faith traditions. This is where their focus is. It's the discovery of a personal spiritual experience and what that experience teaches them. By virtue of the nature of spirit, or God, all things are in fact one thing. As such, as St. Francis wrote, we are family. Brother, sun, sister, moon. And so, for the community that I represent and from my background, I would say this was astonishing, amazing, brilliantly articulate, phenomenally mystical, and far, I mean, I think that people will be reading this for decades, well, hopefully centuries to come. It articulates not only a mystical vision of spirituality, but it articulates an incredibly integrative and responsible view of science.
Our diversities make us stronger from the cellular level to the macroscopic, planetary, cosmic level. In a lot of my work, I'm working with religious leaders who are leading communities who say, outside or within Colorado, they're working with people who are deeply tied to oil industry or the coal industry. I have a friend who's an Episcopal priest in Kentucky, and he said, when it comes down to it, 90% of my congregation puts food on the table because of the coal industry. So if I speak from the pulpit, this radical message that needs to be heard, how do I hold people in making those difficult changes? Because this is hard, and anybody who thinks otherwise hasn't actually started to make the changes that need to be made.
The Holy Quran is full of verses that God created this earth for us as the most beautiful way we can think of or imagine. And He created man also in the most beautiful shape to be in. And He made man on this earth the vicegerent of God, or the trustee of God. And we all know what is the responsibility of a trustee person in a college or university or any fund of that, to keep it good and to make it grow to the best. The word fasad, which is corruption or wrongdoing, it being mentioned more than 55 times in the Quran, and it applies to the corruption among people themselves, bribery to the people in offices or government, and also apply to throwing a stone on the sidewalk of the street, or throwing a banana peel in the street. This is also considered fasad or corruption we are committed on the earth. In the creation, at the start of the creation, God created Adam, and He make the angels bow to Adam to show how much noble is this human being is. He get nobility above all other creature God may created. And He put him on earth, which is the most beautiful planet in the universe. And He make him, like I said, the vicegerent of God on earth, to keep it in the best that He received it and deliver it at the end the best as it could be.
The basic Buddhist worldview is quite different from that of Catholicism, and yet they intersect in some very interesting and important ways. For Buddhism, the important issue isn't good guys against bad guys, but the basic question is really delusion versus wisdom, or ignorance versus enlightenment, awakening, and so forth. And probably the most problematic form of delusion is our sense of separation. Most generally today, of course, a sense of separation and alienation of humanity as a whole and its relationship with the rest of the earth. This encyclical isn't only concerned about climate change or even the larger ecological crisis, but it sees that this is reflecting something more. To the extent that you could even say the ecological crisis is kind of a symptom of a civilization that seems to have lost its way. He points at the issues of anthropocentrism, the fundamental sense that that all values refer back to us. Everything is meaningful insofar as it serves our own benefit. And he raises very significant questions about that and our whole technocratic approach, both to each other and to the earth as a whole. So in all of these ways, these are really very, very profound issues that he's approaching very deeply and in ways that I think resonate very deeply with fundamental concerns of Buddhists as well.
Collaboration and altruism is fundamental to evolution, to humanity, and the survival of virtually all species. And that if we simply stand up for what we know to be for the common good, then that principle will be activated and the world will move with it.
Beautiful.